Okay guys, please take out your notes from last Thursday. The notes were titled Trig Identities. I'd like to try one problem with you today, and then you can try your exit ticket thereafter. So here we go. Example, copy this down. Let secant of theta equal negative x with 13 pi over 2 less than or equal to theta less than 7 pi. State the value of sine squared 2 theta. Let me get out of the way so you can see this. So copy that down, guys. That's what we're trying to do. Now we know that we need a picture for this. So let's go to the x and y axis. Now we are playing with radians, so let's label these as radians. 0, pi over 2, pi, and 3 pi over 2. But the problem that I see right away is that I don't see these numbers there. And that's because these angles are too big. So let's make them smaller. So let's subtract 2 pi from these angles as many times as we have to until we get numbers that look like this. So for instance, take 7 pi and subtract 2 pi from it. That'll turn it into 5 pi. But I don't see that on the map. So subtract 2 pi again. That gives you 3 pi. I still don't see that there. So subtract 2 pi again, and it's just pi. So do the same here. Do that on your Casio if you want. Type in 13 pi over 2, and from it, take away 2 pi. Take away 2 pi, and it says 9 pi over 2, but I don't see that there. So again, keep subtracting 2 pi as many times as you have to. Eventually, it'll say pi over 2. So really, our angle theta is between pi over 2 and pi, which is quadrant number 2. So go to quadrant 2 and draw your right triangle, something like that. And so now we need the sides of the triangle. So for that, recall what secant is. Secant is hypotenuse over adjacent. But the problem here is that this doesn't look like a fraction until now. So we have our hypotenuse and we have our adjacent. So that means that on the picture we have these sides. The adjacent is 1 and the hypotenuse is x. However, since you move to the left, the 1 should be negative, which is why this is negative. Now, let's find the missing piece with Pythagorean theorem. So we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So this is 1 plus b squared equals x squared. Now again, we're trying to find the value of b. So let's solve for b. Subtract 1 from both sides. And then of course, square root both sides. Square root x squared minus 1. And that is positive because you go up. So now let us proceed to the goal. The goal is this. So the goal here in blue is sine squared 2 theta. Well, that's the same as sine of 2 theta, bracketed squared. So now let's take a quick time out. Let us revisit the value of this. Okay guys, so recall from last time that there is a specific trig identity that we can use for a problem like this. And that identity says something along the lines of sine of 2 theta is equal to 2 sine theta cosine theta. But you know what? What happens What happens if I have something with a 2 there? So all you've done is you've squared the left-hand side. So to adjust this, all you'd have to do is square the right-hand side, all right? Okay, so as we just saw, sine of 2 theta, the stuff in the bracket gets replaced by 2 sine theta cosine theta. Why don't we go off and try to find sine and cosine individually? Let's show our work over here somewhere. So, some scratch work. Sine of theta, well, theta is right here. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So that's opposite over hypotenuse. Something like that. Now, what about cosine? Cosine of theta. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So that would be this over that. So it seems as though we have the pieces that we need to come back over here. Just continue it over here. So I have a bracket, and then 2 is just 2. Sine of theta is square root x squared minus 1 over x times. Now what replaces cosine? Negative 1 over x. Bracketed, squared, that's the 2. Now why don't we clean up the stuff in the brackets first? Let's see. In the numerators, 2 is over 1, right? In the numerators, I have a negative 2 square root x squared minus 1. And the denominators, 1 times x is x squared. All of that bracketed squared. Now, if I have a fraction being squared, I know that the fraction is multiplied by itself, but what you can do is just multiply or square each individual component of that fraction. So final answer over here off to the side. So negative 2 squared becomes 4. If I square the square root, it's just the content inside in parentheses. And the denominator, x squared, gets squared, which means it's x to the power of 4. Box this in for our final answer. Now it's your turn. Please try the attached exits ticket, and we'll play more tomorrow.